It's another Acoustic Alternatives at Grove Studios in Ypsilanti, Michigan. GroveStudios.space to check out the space yourself. Without Grove Studios, as I've mentioned in most of the last, 40 or so, I don't do this without them. They encouraged me to do it in the fall of 2020. It was a pandemic, you may recall, not a lot going on in our lives, and they had just started this business, and they wanted it to take off. So they invited me to do something that would give it a little bit more exposure. Happy to have done so, because without it, I would have missed out on a lot of great conversations that we've had. The purpose, if this is the first time you're tuning in because you already know the artist, the purpose of the podcast is really to expose people to music that they wouldn't otherwise be hearing, to get stories about the artists, and to, you're not going to hear everything on the radio that is worth hearing, especially the stories. So today I'm welcoming an artist that just stumbled into my life. A month ago, I didn't know who you were. I'm going to apologize and tell you that up front. Joe Goodkin is here. Hello, Joe.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me, John.
My pleasure. Good to meet you. From Chicago, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Has that always been your home base? Have you lived elsewhere?
Yeah, I grew up in Oak Park, which is a suburb of Chicago.
Sure.
And I went to college up in Madison, in Wisconsin, so spent 4 years there. And then since then, I've lived back actually in the city in various locales. So definitely home, born and bred, and currently reside in Chicago.
Very good. The only trip I took this summer, if you don't count going up north once, was to see a Cubs game, a White Sox game, a recording of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me in between, and then a Brewers game. So
wow, you
I made your city.
Yeah, you hit all the really important things, I think.
Well, it made me happy.
Many of them.
Yeah. So Joe has about 14 albums to date. Another one on the way for later. I guess it's next year. You mentioned pre-recording.
Yep.
A couple of ambitious projects was really what got my attention. One that came out in 2022 called The Blues of Achilles, which is a retelling of the Greek poet Homer's The Illiad in original contemporary folk songs. And then that's a companion to one called, what was the Odyssey one called? Just the Odyssey. There it is.
Odyssey, yeah.
We have the camera, so we'll hold that up to the people who can see us.
They still know what CDs are. That's good.
Yes. Well, that is later for you to scribble your signature on. But
great.
Before we get into a bit of conversation about your life, would you like to do a song?
Yeah, that's a great way to start. So one of the features of these two Homeric poems that inspired these song cycles is that they start with something called an invocation, where the bard, or the songwriter in this case, asks for the muse's help in telling the story. So we should maybe start with the invocation to the Blues of Achilles, which is something called Somebody Loved. I sing of endless blood-soaked earth and bodies crumbling into dust. Man turned animal with rage, consumed by violence and lust. Stretching back as far as time, long before the reign of Rome. I sing these songs for you today, for those who never made it home. All of them were bone. All of them were blood. All of them were flesh. Somebody loved. A mother weeping for her son, a father begging for his boy, a wife collapsing at the news, a child puts away his toys, a friend fallen in the field, The body burned, the grief goes on. So many souls without a voice. So many ghosts that can't move on. All of them were bone. All of them were blood. All of them were flesh. Somebody loved.
Joe Goodkin's my guest on Acoustic Alternatives today, and having him tell stories and play songs kind of largely based on this really intriguing thing that you've done.
Yeah. Intriguing is one word. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's ambitious. That's another way to put it.
Yeah.
Before we do that, though, tell me a little bit about Joe, the kid, growing up in Chicago suburbs. What kind of stuff did you do as a kid?
Yeah, I started guitar pretty early, at the age of 8. I actually wanted to play guitar at the age of 6, but hands were considered not big enough by the family. And though at the time I wasn't happy about it, my parents, who are both musicians, started me on piano when I was 6, which of course turned out to be a great idea, because learning piano when you're 6 and learning to read music when you're 6 on a piano can only help you later on in your music career.
For sure.
So then at 8, I started guitar lessons proper. So music was really the main thing I did growing up. Also, this is the time of Michael Jordan and the Bulls, so there was a lot of basketball, because how could there not be? And also some theater and some performances like that. So those were kind of my main activities when I was growing up, in Chicago.
Were you a bit of a nerd? Because I'm not saying that in a mean way. It just seems like you're drawing to this.
I was drawn certainly to more intellectual pursuits as well.
That's a better way to
I
put
would
it.
say the proud nerd badge as well. Yeah. So literature, math, and stories like that, which I think have carried through to my music career. Yeah.
But you loved sports. Did you play sports?
I played sports to a point. I played sports up until high school, basketball in particular, being relatively tall.
That's true you were.
I got by with that until...
Volleyball you could block.
Yeah, right. But really, once I got to high school, theater and music took up most of my time as the after-school activities and the pursuits.
You had roles on stage in your theater productions?
I did, yeah, I did. I was in Cabaret, big one, all sorts of stuff, some Shakespeare. We had I'm a graduate of Oak Park River Forest High School, and we still do have an excellent theater and music program there. So I did a lot within that.
None of that surprises me, actually. At all. I mean, just based on what I've heard.
Yeah, sure.
It doesn't have any I would never have guessed you did theater. Well, you probably did do theater, because you've basically taken these odes and turned them into song cycles.
That's exactly right.
And I don't think, not to say that other musicians aren't regular people, but regular people don't do that.
No, well,
intellectuals do that.
It takes a certain amount of skill set, and it takes a certain amount of learning about them, which is really what I got to in college when I majored in classics. And that's where the intellectual sort of structure behind these and the learning that the texts that we read as Homer's Illiad and Odyssey were originally performed as songs by bards and rhapsodes, which are really the forerunners of singer-songwriters we have today. They're that chain that goes back to trusting our singer-songwriters to tell us stories and move us is not just something we've come up with in the last century. That goes back 3 millennia, maybe more. We're sort of the people who were entrusted to carry people's stories, and especially before the invention of writing, which is where these poems really originated. We were the only way that people could, have their stories told after they died. You couldn't write things down. So I was really moved by that. I thought it was really poignant. I thought, looking at how people take in music now and are still moved by it, and like we were talking about before, how people need music.
Yeah, we do.
Need it. There's a reason for that. There's an intellectual basis to it, but really what's powerful about it is it taps into these emotions, and that's what really ensures that stories will continue to be told, I think.
I would say that the story of Sir Robin has been told to me very well by the Monty Python voice
That's it.
in bard form.
But it's great. I mean, you remember it, right?
Right,
I mean,
of
that's
course
a
I do.
perfect example.
Brave.
You know, it doesn't have to be a war story. That, you know, I know I started us off with a little light song this morning.
Yeah.
But it can be something like that. It can be the alphabet song. It can be anything you think of. Music has that power and capacity and that utility as well. It's a perfect mixture, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, stories and songs especially have kept me going my entire life. There's very down times in my life that if music hadn't been there, I probably wouldn't be having this conversation with you because I wouldn't be here anymore. So it has saved lives more than mine, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does the opposite, but you know, that's not what it's intended to do. But it's an escape. It's an escape is what I always refer to it at the NPR station when we give you the news. You know, we've got to tell you what's going on. It may not be great. And then, okay, now we're going to give you some music so you can think about something else for a few minutes.
Now you can remember that we're human beings and
capable of creating beauty.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Well, if I had to venture to guess, just without having read anything, just you sent me some records.
Yeah.
There was some digital files sent to me. That's how I got to hear your music. I didn't read anything. I like to just take it in first and then do a little digging. And then the first thing that came to mind when listening to your records was influences, Beck. Because because I can hear Beck in your voice. Like you could put a record out that says Beck demos, and I wouldn't know that it's not him.
Wow. Okay, I'll take that. I think he's clearly one of the most important artists of the last 30 years. And
and I'm thinking more the later period.
Morning Phase.
Morning Phase. Yeah,
Morning Phase, and what was the second one? The second Mutation.
Mutations. Yeah. So those records kind of have this feel to it.
Yeah. Cool.
And you have a bit of an indie rock background as well. So the stuff you're doing now isn't what you started doing when you started making music.
No, and it's gone through a couple iterations. I mean, when you have 14 albums, and I didn't put my. I have some music before that as well, before the 14 that I sort of count as my own. I sort of came of age. I started my freshman year the same month that Nevermind came out. It was like, or the month after, whatever that famous day was when that and Blood Sugar Sex Magic and I think Bad Motorfinger and the Tribe Called Quest record.
It's
I mean,
kind
it's
of
like
a big day.
The day that, right. So I was like perfectly situated, to be permanently affected by that, by growing, by coming of age in that time, and when music is that important to you that it really is your whole life, if music is your thing. So that definitely has sort of shaped a lot of the music I made, especially early on. Indie rock, grunge, really impacted by grunge. But then as it's. If you want to keep making music, it is expensive to make music with groups of people.
Really? I had no idea.
Yeah, right, exactly. And unfortunately, people don't like to hear this, but that stuff impacts how people make their art. It's unavoidable. It's just money and resources are behind so many things in music that people, why bands break up, things like that. It's not this romantic thing always. So I made some really records that I love under the name Paper Arrows, which are indie rock, working with a couple people in Chicago sort of consistently that, I guess you call it a band. It was drums, bass, all sorts of sounds. And then I realized I just couldn't tour with that. Like I didn't have label support. We couldn't sell enough tickets clearly at first. And I was already, 30 at that point. It was like, we can't be 21 or 22 and get in a van and which I admire and, is still a way to do it. I think maybe sort of.
It's a commitment you weren't able to make financially probably at that point in your life.
Exactly. And I had some success with that project and licensing it to television and getting some college radio and AAA play with it. It was nice, but it wasn't enough to just lean on that for a living or to sort of keep going with it. And so I had these solo projects, this Odyssey piece that I'd been working on for over a decade or performing with, and I realized that it was sort of the perfect thing for how I could get by, and I also loved it. It's just me and a guitar. I can. That's all. It's it. I can go anywhere as long as sort of people can support my travel and pay me a fee. And so I really leaned into that, and that really set me up to understand what I could do by myself. And I expanded that into these 3 solo records that I sent you that are sort of me telling my story as a bard. And so the last 7 or 8 records have largely been just me, although I have dipped back into making records with a band here or there. But I like working alone. I like being an itinerant bard. It's sort of, it's really exciting to be out there kind of by myself and to really feel like in a really tough environment to be a musician. You know, I found this little lane that feeds me both professionally and also creatively, and sort of like I feel like I am part of this chain that goes back 3,000 years, and I'm moving people the same way that people have always moved people.
People might learn about these things you've written about because of you. They might not have otherwise explored those pieces of work. Well, when you put out that first record with your band, did you have any particular ambitions? Did you have like goal? I want to play Lollapalooza. Goal. I want to like get, support by a band that's.
Yeah, I mean, I think vaguely. I didn't, you never know how to do that stuff. You just sort of look at like what other people have done, and you go, how did they do that? So I had a couple meetings with people who were, I don't know, in different places in the business, who sort of gave me ideas about how to move that project forward a little bit. And a lot of that at the time, this is 2008. So radio was sort of still a thing, was a thing. And a terrestrial radio was really still a thing. And so I did some work through radio, which got me these placements on TV shows. And that was kind of when harnessing licensing music was a big deal. It was post like that Garden State, kind of, where movie soundtracks were breaking bands, and kind of, Grey's Anatomy was breaking bands. It was a really big thing, right? Yeah. So it was kind of the tail end of that, where there was still room for like an indie artist to get into that before all these big bands kind of came downstream into it. And when their revenues dried up with selling records, they were like, wait, we can still make a little bit of money licensing our music, and that crowded us all out. So I worked mostly in that space, but I could just never figure out how to tour with it. And I was understanding from touring with this Odyssey piece that old model of just getting in a room with people and playing, it still works. It's still, people buy your CDs or your vinyl, sometimes even if they don't have turntables or CD players, they want to support music that moves them. And, do I want people to listen to the CD or the record? Absolutely. But if that's the way they're moved and they want to support like my career, I'm just as excited about that and moved by that, and they can stream it and have this sort of like physical thing that helps them remember the experience. So after trying some more of this conventional, trying to find a booking agent, trying to move up into festival, I mean, that stuff's so competitive. It's just like, sometimes it happens, but unless you have a lot of kind of capital or ins behind yourself, it's just, you sort of have to just claw your own way. You have to lean into the stuff that works. You have to try a lot of things, and you have to be ready for your career to look totally different from anybody else's, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That means you're doing it,
Yeah. I know it seems like this is not a statement I should have started with I know, because I don't know. I know of the touring schedules of some up-and-coming artists where they do the college circuit and they play the little rooms, not necessarily what you're doing, but it is a whole thing. Like you can make a start of a living and build some audiences in college towns by playing, and they pay pretty well. Mm-hmm. So you have found a different way to do that, like not the same, like I'm going to play in your lunchroom or whatever they have.
You're talking about the NACA thing, kind of, right? Yeah.
You found a way to like make it educational, which is really.
I fooled everybody.
I know, but it's cool and unique. You were talking about like you have to find your own way. You found your own way. You found a way to make a living. I don't know if that's the only touring you're doing these days.
It's really the bulk of it. Next year with this new record, I'm going to start. I've tried this before to varying degrees of success, but I've tried to sort of work in regular shows to this touring schedule that's more supported by academic departments and colleges. So I'm going to try that again when this new record comes out. But by and large, the people that book me are classics departments at colleges around the country. Sometimes, it'll be a slightly larger, like a humanities department or a liberal arts department, but my booking contacts are basically classics professors and classics department chairs, and they have me come in and talk to classes. And then what I did last night at University of Michigan was sort of like where you would figure an academic lecture would take place. It was 5:30 in the afternoon in this big, beautiful room in their union, and the audience was a mixture of students, undergrads, graduate students, academics who taught there, and then general public, because my shows are almost always free and open to the public, which is a great relief as any touring artist we know who has to think about ticket sales.
Right.
I never have to think about that. It's just,
great.
it's amazing. And it really encourages people to come see the show too. It's an absolute blessing. And then the departments that book me get the benefit of me helping to open the door to other people being interested in their classes and their material, and helping, these stories, they are challenging. They're from a weird time. They're from a different place. They're from a culture with names that we don't recognize and customs. And if I can distill it into these recognizable folk songs or blues songs, it helps people to connect with it on a human level, which then gets them interested in exploring the academic side of it and intellectual side of it. So I feel that's something that's taken a long time to build up, but I don't take it for granted. And it made me, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but I thought it was sort of this weakness that my touring schedule looked a lot different from other artists. But I really have come to see it as this amazing strength the more I hear about what other people have to go through to book tours.
Are you making a living doing what you love?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the answer.
Exactly.
That's the answer.
That's
You
exactly
found
right.
it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask you to do another song,
Yeah.
but I'm going to ask you to do something unusual before that because I didn't notice it until you were playing your first song. Somehow behind you, the curtain has opened up, so there's this weird light. So just pull the curtain a little bit so the weird light goes away. There we go. And now when we have the videos later, we won't see this.
Yeah, well, maybe it was like making me look holier
Angelic.
than I am. Yeah.
Yes, the angelic Joe Goodkin is here playing another song. What would you like to do?
Has never been said before.
It's been said now.
Why don't I do another song from the Blues of Achilles, because I have this wonderful resonator guitar, which actually was made here in Michigan by a company called Mule. Mule Resonator Guitars. They are out of Saginaw, and they make all steel body guitars. Amazing company. Used by artists like Charlie Parr. I mean, really, it's a beautiful instrument, and I sort of carry it around just to play these songs from this show. So why don't I do a song called Some Kind of Love, or What Kind of Love, excuse me. And this is from the part of the Illiad where Patroclus, who's a Greek soldier, is saying goodbye to Achilles to go off and fight. So. What kind of love is deeper than the sea, stronger than the iron of a shield, born in the heart and brighter than the sun, so certain that it will never yield? What kind of love goes higher than the sky, somewhere out beyond the broken blue, underneath my skin and darker than the night? That's my love for you. Well, I will gladly wear your sorrow like armor clasped around my chest. Well, I will lead your troops to battle as surely as the sun sets in the west. What kind of love is older than the earth and sweeter than the promises of youth, falling in my tears and dripping in my sweat? That's my love for you. Well, I will listen to your heartbeat in the silences you make. Well, I don't need to hear you tell me what you can give, I will take. What kind of love will shine after I'm gone, longer than the days are true, flowing in the blood, it's coursing in my veins? That's my love for you. It's my love for you.
My guest today on Acoustic Alternatives is Joe Goodkin, and we're live in Grove Studios. Well, we're live personally right now, but we're recording this in Grove Studios. Grove Studios has been the home, as I mentioned, of the podcast since the beginning, and I'd say like 95% of the ones you can find at johnbomarito.com were recorded here. Every great now and then we go to somebody's house. I had the pleasure of visiting Jeff Daniels on his property and having his son Ben do the engineering while we talked about. We couldn't talk about acting at all. We had to talk about just music, which was great because I've always admired his music anyway.
Yeah, right.
But there's been many, but without Grove, it doesn't happen. GroveStudios.space. If you're a band, we're in the largest room. Joe's impressed with this room. I'm going to show you the other ones before we go. There's 5 different rooms in this building you can rent, and you can do it anytime. 2 a.m, if that's what works for you, come on by. It's a 24/7 operation. It's a keypad. You pay for that, and you can come and do your practice, whatever you want. I do a podcast here. There are people who, there's like a DJ room. I'll show you that later, Joe. If you happen to be a club DJ and you wanted to practice those mixes really loud, you can't do that in your apartment.
Nope, can't.
You can do it here. Make a lot of noise. Doesn't matter. Get out of the garage, get into the studio. GroveStudios.space is the website. It's in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Short drive from I-94 between Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, for those of you who don't know where, between Detroit and Ann Arbor, excuse me. For those of you who don't know where Ypsilanti is, and Ypsilanti actually has been written into a couple of songs. I don't know if you know Ypsilanti. Elvis Costello has it in one of his songs. He rhymes it with panties, which is kind of funny. That's phenomenal. Loudon Wainwright III actually has a song called Ypsilanti on, I think it was the soundtrack he did. He did a soundtrack. Anyway, okay. Yes.
That's a good, I mean, if it's those 2 songwriters,
yes,
that's good company.
Kalamazoo has been written into many more songs than Ypsilanti, but it's easier to rhyme. Kalamazoo, zoo, zoo, zoo.
Right.
Anyway, just played something from the Blues of Achilles, and I wanted to ask how difficult it was to set up working with the late, great Steve Albini. That's pretty cool.
Steve, he passed away a year ago. Yeah. Unfortunately, very, very,
surprising.
Yeah, surprising and young. And he would, from the grave, he would probably come back if I called him a producer and
smack you.
Yeah. So he engineered the recording of the Blues of Achilles. He recorded it. It was shockingly easy. I had premiered the songs that were the Blues of Achilles in March of 2020, right as the pandemic was shutting everything down. So I had to cancel all my in-person gigs that I'd booked for the next year. I was lucky that I worked a lot with it over Zoom. So after playing maybe 25 shows on Zoom with it for these college departments, they were looking for educational content. I realized it was really getting to the point where I thought I could record it and wanted to. And I really wanted to record it analog. I wanted to record to tape. I'd never done that. Or if I did it, it was when I was in high school and didn't understand how cool tape was. And I really wanted to record it like those old blues recordings of the 20s and 30s on half-inch tape, or they might have even been quarter-inch, but half-inch tape live, I thought, would be perfect. So he's the guy that only records to tape. He only records analog. He's in Chicago. His studio is not even 3 miles from my house. Oh, wow. And so all I did was email him. And I emailed the studio, and I said I'd love to do this Resonator, this album of Resonator guitar songs and vocals, live to tape, and would you guys take on this project? And not even 2 hours later, I just got this email and said Steve, and he emailed me back. My wife said I yelped. Like when the email came in, she heard me, and he was incredibly nice. We got on the phone. Hilariously, he was trying to convince me that he would do a good job with it. I'm not even kidding you. He was
trying to sell himself.
He's like, I made a record like this. You should check this out. I think I can do a good job with it. I'm like,
Steve, I know who you are,
dude.
A lot of people know who you are, Steve.
You've made, I know he made, Nirvana record In Utero, but the Jason Molina Magnolia Electric Company records that he made are some of my favorite of all. Like everything he does, right? It has this sound, and that's what I wanted. So we talked, we set up, we recorded on Memorial Day 2021, which was really appropriate for a group of war songs. It was really nice. He answered the door. He always wore these like almost car mechanic jumpsuits when he recorded. And since it was a pandemic, he was wearing a mask. And I didn't know it was him. I thought it was like a stage, like one of his assistants opening the door.
Or his car mechanic.
Right, exactly. Who's there helping out. And then, we got to spend one day. We recorded the whole album, live to half-inch tape. They're all single takes. It was just that day. He was the nicest, most, he says he doesn't produce, okay, in the way a producer does. But if you knew what to ask him, he would tell you what he thought, and he would tell you if he thought you could do a better performance, which is exactly what I was looking for. I gave myself one kind of fanboy question, and that I actually asked about Jason Molina instead of asking about Kurt Cobain. And because we recorded in the same room that Magnolia Electric Company record was made, and he told us some stories about that, my wife and me, and we listened to the playback, and then that was it. And it was amazing. I felt I should never say never. I doubt I'm going to win a Grammy ever, but I sent him a thank you email, and he replied and said, I wish that all of our clients were half as prepared as you were for these sessions. And I thought from him, like, that is the most professional validation. Like, that means more to me than anything, because he cared about that a lot. He thought musicians should be professional. He set aside taste in music and always did his best. And for him to say that, it was the nicest thing he could have said to me. So it meant a lot, and I feel really lucky to have that thing we made together. I feel really lucky to be part of his catalog.
That is really cool. Had he heard of you before you contacted him?
I don't think so.
You've been performing around, so it was possible.
I had, but I'm not exactly a household name.
No, I know.
No, but I don't think so. I mean, I definitely have worked with a lot of musicians who have worked with him. He was very available. If he thought he could do a good job with a project, he would take it. He believed in a very affordable rate. If he knew he didn't have, if he wasn't making the Page Plant record that he made, he had a, not cheap rate, but not something that was unobtainable for independent musicians. He really, really tried to make himself available for projects he wanted to do. He thought he could do a job with that, to make himself affordable. So I have nothing but high praise for him. It was awesome. Yeah.
Cool to have that as part of your story.
It really is. Yeah.
Why do you think the works of Homer have stood the test of time? These are really old, and now we're still talking about. Not only are we talking about them, you turn them into your life's work almost.
Well, and Christopher Nolan's next movie next year is The Odyssey.
Is it?
Yes. Nobody's happier about that than me, by the way.
Did you ask to do the soundtrack? I
mean, I emailed him over and over, and it turns out that his email address is not chris@christophernolan.com.
Oh.
No. It's a great question.
You've lived inside the works.
I have,
because you've been singing them in your own voice.
I have this sort of theory, which I'm sure I didn't invent, but I'll take credit for that stories are sort of like there's sort of an evolutionary fitness to stories, where if stories can get people to keep retelling them, then they survive. Something in the story has to make people want to retell it and want to hear it again. And I think that that's simplistic, and I know there are circumstances that surround what stories get told, and like in Hamilton, who lives, who dies, who tells your story, right? But when you have that much, that kind of track record with these stories, and the variety of cultures and people who have been moved by them, by different aspects of them, to keep retelling them, re-singing them, putting them on screens, writing books about them, writing plays about them, it's I think because they came out of this oral tradition where storytellers, even before they were written down, had sung these stories for hundreds. And the events of Troy, if you think the Trojan War happened, were probably 400 to 500 years before these poems were written down. Okay, think about that. The 1500s, from here. So before they even get documented, there's this giant stretch of time where people are singing them and retelling them. And I think that process baked in this sort of collective human wisdom or collective human experience into them, that whether or not you know that's what you feel when you read it. You feel thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of voices that have shaped these stories. It's not most people think it's not an authorial situation, like somebody sat down and wrote these. There might have been an editor named Homer at the end who kind of collected them, and the same way Robert Johnson kind of took these blues songs and canonized them. That's, I think, our oral tradition in this country. But I think that collective contribution to creation is why they keep getting retold and why they move people like that. If I had to put an intellectual sort of spin on it, I think that would be it.
Obviously, they moved you enough all these years later to write songs. What was the process of taking something that was already oral history and writing your own songs out of the stories? I mean, you just create the character in your head and go, okay, I imagine.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, you're the first person that sort of distilled it that. No, but what I tried to do is I tried to look for things that I thought were another feature or outcome of it being the history of the oral retellings of these is I think they actually leave room for other people to come in and look around and figure out something to say about it. So there's a sort of almost a geographical, physical space for me around the text where if I read a scene, I can go inside it and I can look around and I can see who didn't say anything but who was there. Maybe it's this character. I can see something that the text doesn't tell us about the person who's speaking. You know, oh, they're crying or whatever it is. They must feel this way. And so a lot of it for me was imagining myself in that role, and then by listening to what other people have wrote about it or sung about it, trying to give myself a vocabulary around that character's experience. If it's a woman, you know, if it's a soldier, if it's a mother or father, you know, I look for what other people have said about it who maybe can get a little closer to the character than me, and then I look for stuff that I think would also subvert a little bit what people first think. I look for characters, aspects of characters that maybe are opposite what people think about them. I try to make them more complex and more well-rounded. I guess that would be the process.
It's a pretty interesting approach, and I'm happy for you that you've been able to take it and make we'll call it you're making a career out of it right now. Like I said, we mentioned earlier, making a living at it. So before we move on to other non-Homer Iliad Odyssey related topics, would you like to do one more from that cycle of songs?
That'd be great. Okay. Let's do this was actually the first song I wrote for the Blues of Achilles, although it happens very late in the story. It's the King of Troy, Priam. Spoiler alert on the 3,000-year-old story. I know. I have to say that.
Don't.
I know.
Don't do it. Come on.
Yeah. His son Hector, Achilles has killed his son Hector and has taken the body back to the Greek camp and is refusing to give it back. And that's essentially, it's still the worst thing you could do to a parent, but it was really, really, you know, to have a proper burial of somebody who died in war in this society that created these stories was, you know, they desperately needed to have that happen for closure and for all sorts of reasons. So this is called Hands of Grief. Priam goes to Achilles' tent, to the tent of the man who killed his son, and in a desperation and grief, gets down on his knees and begs Achilles to give his son's body back to him. So this is Hands of Grief. Well, I'm before you on my knees, kissing the hands of my grief. My son was cut down in the fighting, and your hands took him from me. Well, he was strong as a lion, with a full head of hair. And now it's caked with dust and rotten, but I still see him everywhere. If he had listened to my warnings, maybe he'd still be at my side. He knew the risk but fought for glory. When he fell, part of me died. I don't have much more to give to a world that's bled me dry. I don't have much life to live, or many tears left to cry. So think of someone who you love, who might someday be like me, and grant mercy to my son's body, and put him in my hands of grief, and put him in my hands of grief.
Nicely done. Joe Goodkin's on Acoustic Alternative, and Those are his words, not Homer's words. But
right.
Intriguingly has taken the two classic stories and made him your own.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is pretty cool. Well, as a songwriter, when you're not reinterpreting the works of Homer,
Yeah.
And you've written songs for solo albums that are in front of me that are not Paper Arrows records, how do you know when you're writing a song, or like when you were transitioning between the band and a solo artist? Do you have like I wonder how Phil Collins did that too. Like, is this a Genesis song or is this a Phil song? Like, asking you the same question. Like, how do you know it's a Joe song? And since you're kind of talking about maybe bringing the band back into existence.
Yeah, there was a pretty clean break because I started writing these very personal songs that they felt like Joe Goodkin songs. They felt like just me. It was so obvious that the I was me in the songs, and the detail was so much about me that I just, my instinct told me that they were just my songs, and I should just put my own name on them and record them myself. And now I came back to some of these songs from these 3 solo records and put out an EP this year called just Joe Goodkin with a full band on it. I was really lucky. Yeah,
smart ass.
And I also put out a Joe Goodkin record called Paper Arrows.
I saw that.
Yeah, I know. Smart ass. Exactly. But that was more that I wanted to revisit some of these. I thought there was a selection of these songs that I could record with a band and sort of expand them and find some new things about them after living with them and playing them for 10 years. So I guess I just go on instinct with what, how they should be recorded, what they should sound like. And, to be upfront, like if I have the money to pay a band, like if I feel like I want to put together a production and I can with my means, that also, I got a grant, like sort of a end of COVID arts stimulus grant to record this record last year. I got a small grant from the city of Chicago to record the record that's coming out next year. And that, that's really exciting. Then you start to think, oh, I can afford to pay a producer like Brian Deck, who made these last 2 records, who made Iron and Wine records and all sorts of other great records. And I can afford to pay musicians like good money that I love, that I really want to work with, like Nora O'Connor and Kelly Hogan, who sang backup on the record, who are amazing.
Wondering whose voice that was without credits. Like, you sent me a few CDs and there's credits, but the digital ones, I'm like, well, there's a female voice. I wonder who that is.
And also Lindsay Anderson, who's on the record that hasn't come out. I mean, all these people I love who work in Chicago that I really I want to support. I want to be part of my project, and I want to, contribute to musicians being musicians. So yeah, that's how I decide, I guess.
That's makes sense.
Yeah.
Obviously the Homer songs are written characters. When you're writing, what I noticed in the records I did hear is that there's a lot of very personal stories.
Yes.
Are those always personal, or are you writing character stories sometimes there as well? Is the I always I?
No, it's not. It is in some cases. It is on these records largely, although even when the I is me, it's always a character in the song to some extent, as you know. I'd say the I is always me because it's something that I'm thinking or feeling or thinking about some character as if it's me.
You have to sing it.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to put yourself into it.
The record that's coming out next year, which is called Winedark Life, is sort of an alter ego type, an alter ego I, if you will. So it's, is the Bob Dylan I ever I in his songs? I don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. He doesn't know.
He's pretty vague. So.
Yeah. So I don't think there's a kind of a clean cut. I mean, I just try to let the words speak for themselves, and I think it's pretty obvious, if you really wanted to get textual with it.
Well, I do. No, I don't. I don't want to make it too hard. It's still morning. Let's give some context for people. It's 9 a.m. Here's a musician singing for me at 9 a.m. So you got to give them a little credit for that, because this is wake up time for some of them, not playtime. Circling back a little bit to the Homer stuff, just kind of playfully, do you think Homer, who wrote those, would like your music? Do you think that he would have approved, or do you think his family wants royalties from these things?
I mean, there's something to using royalty-free material, right?
Yes, there is.
It's public domain.
1929 or before, right now.
I think he was a little before that.
Yes.
What I would just hope is that there would be a respect for another bard. I think taste is, I think I really do feel moved by the idea that I'm just another link in a chain that goes all the way back to whoever Homer was or whatever Homer was. And before, if there was Homer, who did he listen to? Who were his influences?
Yeah, probably not Nirvana.
But yeah, right, probably Steve Albini. Definitely Robert Johnson. No, I mean it's I guess, is it cool when people whose music you like your music? Absolutely. I'll use that analogy. But you also can't control that. Who knows? I would take it's kind of the Albini thing. I would take respect over, sort of first, and then it'd be cool if he said, hey, I saw what you did with that character. Like that was pretty cool. You took my thing and you did that with it.
Twisted it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I know there's a ton of like thank you type notes on your website from the performances you've done at universities. Mm-hmm. Have you heard from students and how it has impacted their understanding of these stories?
Oh yeah, that and honestly, that's the academic validation is great. Like I know that that they're academics that are into what I do, and some of them are my friends, and they book me repeated bookings. That's kind of the best sign of sort of that you're onto something. But I am sort of an audience first person. Like I judge a performance by how it moves the audience. I try to set aside my ego about, did I get exactly what I wanted to do with that one note there? I mean, you have to get a certain amount of it right in musical, but I've had shows that I know I wasn't at my best, like I was fighting a cold, or I was fighting it being 6 shows in 6 days, and to me, like if you ask me, I would think it was not a great performance. But I've seen how students or and an audience have been moved, and I just think to myself, it doesn't matter if I wasn't happy with my performance. I'll try to do better and best, but to have a student come up and say, hey, this was a tough text when I had to read it, but I'm going to go back to it now because like I saw this thing you were doing, and I was able to see something I missed. I mean, that happened Saturday night. I played at St. John's College in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and that happened right there. They all read the Great Books sequence there, which includes the Illiad and the Odyssey, and the student came up and said, I read this freshman year and I didn't like it, but I really like this, and I know now I have to go back to it. And that happened last night at Michigan. It's the best compliment anybody can give me. I mean, that's really the best compliment anybody can give me. Yeah.
High five across the table. That is having impact. I mean,
Cheers.
that's
right.
that's your hope for.
Mm-hmm.
Often people, well, not often, I'm asked occasionally, like, who would be hard for you to interview?
Yeah.
And usually I come up with Sting because he's a pretty intelligent writer, especially in those early days. And his use of Scylla and Charybdis in
Nabokov.
Yes, and wrapped around your finger.
Yeah.
I felt like I'd be intimidated by his intelligence just because, like, I don't know if I could have a conversation with somebody who uses those words.
Right.
It's just, what are your thoughts on like the way he wove that into a pop song?
I love that. I don't know. I might get in trouble. I'm actually a big Sting solo career fan. Early Sting solo career. I
just bought Japanese pressings with bonus tracks.
There you go. I mean, it doesn't surprise me when I think about how drawn to the Odyssey that I am, but I love the album Soul Cages because that's a C album. It's basically a story and a story.
His father.
Yeah, right, and this story. I mean, you have to use those literary touchstones sort of. I don't want to say carefully, but you have to know what you're deploying when you do that stuff. Is your audience going to go look it up? Is it, what? But I love that he does.
I looked up din when I was a kid because I didn't know what that word. I didn't use that word. What is din?
Yeah.
Din of our Rice Krispies. What does he mean?
See, I think a harder interview would be Stuart Copeland than Sting. For other reasons, maybe. But.
Growing up in my house, there was instruments. My sister played guitar. My other sister played flute. My brother played drums. There was a piano in the house. I play none of them, which is crazy because I'm the only one who's doing anything with music. But there was a drum set in the basement, and when my brother wasn't home, I would try and play along with the records like he did. And I tried to play along with the Police record once, and that's when I said, no, I cannot do this because Stuart Copeland is a much better drummer.
He's a monster,
Yes. I just like, what are these? I didn't know they were called polyrhythms, but like, what is he doing? I can't do that.
He's amazing. And their dynamic just still makes me laugh every time I see it. Like Stuart Copeland's still out there going, when Sting joined my band, you're just like, dude, come on. I mean, fine, maybe, but what are we talking about?
Fun stuff. Audiences other than when you're playing a college campus, when you're doing like a regular show, where are your biggest audiences? Where do you have the best draw?
I just haven't really toured behind this material much.
Well, then it's going to start next year.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Transition into Winedark Life.
That's yeah.
Tell me about this new record.
So
what is Winedark?
So Winedark, it connects to Homer because of course it does. Because of course it does.
Why would you not?
In the Odyssey,
if it isn't broke, don't fix it.
One of these poetic devices that Homer deploys is. He describes the sea as Winedark, the Winedark Sea.
Okay.
When Odysseus was on the Winedark Sea, and it's a beautiful ancient Greek sort of like image, and the words are beautiful. Oinopa ponton is the Winedark Sea in ancient Greek. And just oinos is wine. That's where we get oinophile. Wine faced, oinopos. It's like optic. Like there's connections to a lot of English words with this. Ponton is where we get like pontoon, sea. So I've now been living Odysseus's life for about 20 years. I've been going around telling stories, not murdering people that anybody knows about, but right. So
John Bomarito's last location, Grove Studios, Ypsilanti. Go ahead.
Check his iPhone. So I kind of came up with this character, this bard character who lives a Winedark life, and I was working on a little bit of like a kind of a screenplay to try to tell this sort of adapted version of what my experience is going on. I've played in all 50 states. I've played in Greece and Italy, and cool. I was trying to figure out a way to kind of tell this story fictionally, and I wrote a bunch of music for this sort of fictional story, and the songs just turned out great. Like I loved them. I really, really loved them. And I thought this doesn't need to be attached to anything else. I can just make a solo record with it. And that's what I did. And the record's called Winedark Life. And the first single is gonna come out in November. So we're actually pretty close to that. And then the record itself, I think will be January or February, something in that area. And I'm gonna do CDs and vinyl. So I'll send you a CD for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's coming out in November, but we're going to debut it here.
Yeah, and I'll actually play, this isn't even the single, I'll play the title track. I've played it in person once or twice, but this will be the, kind of
debut.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is the title track. It's called Winedark Life. Sirens in the night, broken birds take flight. Meet me in the fields and we can run. In your numbered bones, I count myself unknown. Backwards down from 99 to 1. Live a Winedark life. Go home to your waiting wife. She will take you back, no questions asked. And in her Winedark eyes, see the things that she survived. Well, you were on the sea, tied to the mast. Whispers in the dawn, darkness almost gone, lost in the sweet lace of her skin. Just a vagabond, looking to move on, carrying the weight of where I've been. Live a Winedark life. Go home to your waiting wife. Will she take you back? No questions asked. Or in her Winedark eyes, see the things that she survived. Well, you were on the sea, tied to the mast. Live a Winedark life. Winedark life. Winedark Life.
Winedark Life. Joe Goodkin on Acoustic Alternatives from Grove Studios. GroveStudios.space to check it out, to see the full space. You can view the 5 rooms. You can see the one I'm in, which is the largest one. You can rent it yourself for your band practice maybe. Your DJ skills can get practice. There's a room you can engineer your record in, essentially. Or do a podcast like I do. This is set up for that. We're here with Joe, the Chicago-based singer-songwriter, who is on tour doing colleges, essentially, and then prepping for the next year where Winedark Life will come out.
That's right, yeah. Just in time for Christopher Nolan's Odyssey. So.
But this time you're not writing stories about you like other albums that I did here were very personal stories, and this is still kind of stepping out of your own personal space and singing songs that are not Joe. You're not living a Winedark life, are you?
I mean, I am. It doesn't necessarily tell the details in the in that song, but there's a, I think that the bards that told Odysseus' story identified with him because there are a lot of similarities. So, Odysseus was a guy that went around telling stories, and the bards were people who went around telling stories about a guy who went around telling stories, and there's a kinship there that you feel in the text, and it I think any musician who tours will tell you the road's a weird place, and it tells you things about yourself, and it's the process of leaving and coming home, just like Odysseus did when you're making art out on the road and then coming home. Setting aside the details of it is tricky, and it's multi-layered, and there are things about it that where you confront things about yourself in the process that are deep and you learn. So while some of the details are not me, I think the experiences are still largely me in some extent. Yeah.
You didn't know my next question was, you spent a lot of time on the road. What do you usually accompany your rides with? Do you like music? Do you like books on tape? I'll use books on tape. It's kind of funny because what's a tape anymore, right?
Yeah, well, I know. I use 8 tracks. No, I
had some 8 tracks growing up.
How old my car is? No. I'd say heavily on podcasts when I'm driving. That's just I kind of like to keep my head a little clear from music when I'm not performing. But if I'm working on something, or if something's new that I'm really jazzed about, somebody else's thing that I'm been listening to, I'm maybe like 75% podcasts and 25% music or something like that. Yeah, I like the podcast. I guess is sort of the new radio, so that's long form radio.
Hard to tell a guy who does both. Yeah. But yeah, I'm not sure which one I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, you're doing both. That's good.
Thank you. Well, I'm trying to survive, but if I can recommend a podcast called Acoustic Alternatives to you, check it out. There's about 90 episodes now.
I can't wait to dig back even further. I listened when I was going to be on there. They're great.
Yeah, there's a lot to dig into. And I'm trying to let people know about music that I've heard that I want people to know more about. Sometimes it's people you have heard of. Glenn Phillips of Toad the Wet Sprocket, Brian Van Rugger of the Verve. These are people who've had success. But we're also trying to find those musicians out there who are trying to carve their way out in this industry and that haven't gotten the attention they deserve. And Joe is here. So thanks, Joe.
I really appreciate it.
All right, final question. You've gotten a lot of press over the years, and I saw a lot of that on your website. Yeah. Is there one particular quote that stood out to you that made you just kind of validate what you're doing?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, this is this is nerdy. We can connect back. We can do a throwback, but it made me laugh a little bit. It made me laugh a lot when I played at Cornell University. And Cornell University is in Ithaca, New York, which is also Odysseus's island's name is Ithaca. So the headline for the press was "Modern Bard Brings Odyssey to Ithaca," and I thought, "Yep, that's it right there."
That's a good one.
The one we're trying to engineer for next year is I played Homer in Homer, Alaska, in 2021. And so I'm going back to Homer, Alaska to play the Blues of Achilles in June. So we're hoping to maybe replicate a clever headline, Homer and Homer type headline for that. So I'll put that out there as aspirational. But the Odyssey, Modern Bard Brings Odyssey to Ithaca was sort of, I felt like I'd arrived at that point. That scratched the itch. So yeah.
That's a good one. Well, maybe the project after Winedark Life is a song cycle about Homer Simpson.
There it Called Doe. Yeah.
Doe.
Yeah.
Right. You got it.
That's it. Man.
Just watch all 30-some seasons. Wow.
That's it.
Amazing. Joe, thank you so much for
John.
swinging by this morning. I got to go to work now.
Yeah. I got to drive home. I got to get my Winedark Life home.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Sorry
So thank you so
home.
much. This was wonderful. I really appreciate the format and the opportunity to talk about all this work in such a in-depth and way that I think really honors it. So thank you.
Best way for people to find your stuff?
JoeGoodkin.com is sort of the collector of all the things about me, all the projects. And then there are dedicated websites to these Homer pieces. There's joesodyssey.com. And then there's thebluesofachilles.com. And then you can find me on social media at Joe Goodkin and get in touch with me there. And you can buy the records through the website, et cetera, find the stuff on streaming.
Good luck.
You bet. Thanks, John.
You can find my stuff at johnbomarito.com. There is also a link to my somewhat paltry supported Patreon page. I appreciate the folks who are doing it. A lot of your Patreon money is actually going into other people's Patreon's account. So I only get like $17.56 a month from it, which is not nothing, but
it's not.
If you want to support me for doing this, because I have no sponsors, I would love it. Thanks again to Grove Studios for having this space available for me to do this thing that I do. And check them out at grovestudios.space. Joe, safe travels out there.
Thanks, John.